Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid, and today is the 8th of March 2022. I'll begin with the significance of the day. Today is International Women's Day, and of course, I'd like this opportunity to wish all the women in Pakistan, in my family, in my friends, and of course across the country and across the world, a very happy International Women's Day. If you can see, if I'm wearing this badge here that has been given to me by the United Nations Women, it is a badge that represents me as an ambassador for the He for She movement under the United Nations Women. Now, what we need to do, and also what is the theme for this year in the International Women's Day, and that's going to be our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, today, is the role of Pakistani women in uplifting Pakistan and Pakistani society. The theme, nevertheless, is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. We need to give women equal rights, whether they be in the rural populace or the urban areas. They need to be given equal opportunities. And here I'd like to also point out that all my team members in this show are all females. I'm the only male that represents this whole team, but whether it be the researcher or the producer, I belong to an all-female team, and I encourage that more and more channels also include women as part of their team members. This is going to be our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, of the day, and I had to kind of speak a little bit more because, of course, the importance of the day as well, and how the government is also emphasizing on giving women their due rights. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Russia and Ukraine, the Ukraine crisis, how Pakistan is trying to de-escalate the tensions between the two sides and trying to create some kind of a solution that could pave the way forward for peace in the region. Our Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab also has said that Pakistan is committed to establish peace in the world through strategic partnerships. He has addressed a consultative meeting with former foreign secretaries in Islamabad, where he also talked about his conversation with his counterparts in Russia, Ukraine, Romania, Hungary and Poland. Our Prime Minister has also talked with the EU chief and has also emphasized on different important fora, whether it be with the Russian President Vladimir Putin or also with other counterparts, that peace is the only way forward. Let's come to our third story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns Islamophobia and France. We have talked in the past about that as well, about different laws that have enraged Muslims across the world, whether it be Charlie Hebdo or others. Now a landmark report details the sweeping executive powers that have led to Muslim civil society being systematically monitored, investigated and sanctioned by the French state. Now the report says that the French government's anti-Muslim hatred has reached the threshold of prosecution and persecution under international law, and of course it is quite a scathing report that has come out. We'll be talking about that in our third story. And our last story, ladies and gentlemen, of the day is about the ECC, the Economic Coordination Committee of the Cabinet, that has approved a Ramzan package, a Ramzan relief package. We know that Ramzan is just around the corner, a few weeks away, worth 8,280 million in order to facilitate the public during the holy month of Ramzan. This approval has been given during a meeting of the committee in Islamabad with Shaukat Tareen Sahab, who's the finance minister, in the chair. This is going to be our last one. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the International Day of the Woman. The theme this year is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. More in the following report.
Women and their myriad roles, talents are intrinsic for the fabric of every society. In order to eulogize women and their incredible accomplishments in the past and present and inspire young girls to dream big, world is marking International Women's Day today. The theme of this year's International Women's Day is gender bias, with a focus on raising awareness about the impact of bias in women's lives and careers. It's an open secret that there is either direct or indirect discrimination worldwide that affects women's choices and opportunities, their access to resources and rights, and their ability to be active in their community to advance and to contribute. Islam granted women equal rights and prominent positions in society long before the concept of human rights and gender equality were codified. Affirming its commitment to women's rights, Pakistan has launched a national gender policy framework aimed at providing a structured mechanism with defined objectives for improving the lives of women. Addressing a ceremony to celebrate International Women's Day, Premier Imran Khan expounded that the government has made laws that protect women's rights, but it's the society that has to implement them. Unfortunately, gender bias, gender stereotypes and gender inequality are a reality in every society, and key to equitable world lies in recognizing the problem, address it through policies and programs.
Now, Sidra Riaz, who's GM Communications and Media, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, joins us online. Not online, in fact, I have to rephrase it, in the studios with me here. Sidra, thank you very much to have joined us.
Thank you for having me.
Sidra, PPAF, we had to talk to a woman, we had to talk to somebody who's working in the development sector, because this is the sector that is one of the sectors that is really promoting the presence of women and the equitable distribution of jobs to women. When we talk of PPAF and we talk of such development organizations, how important do you feel has the role of women been, and women being given jobs under different schemes of the organization?
So, like you said, I'm sitting here representing my organization, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, and in the development sectors, organizations like mine, it's very important. Of course, if you talk about our work, then we're trying to promote more and more inclusion of women, towards financial inclusion, making sure that they have more livelihood opportunities. But if you talk about organization like mine as well, it's very important for, I'm a working mom, and I have lots of other responsibilities as well. So organizations like mine, it's very important for these organizations to provide a fulfilling environment for women. For example, we have a good daycare facility at my organization. If you talk about the legal framework, it's the gender laws are the laws in Pakistan are quite gender friendly. So if you talk about my organization, other organizations as well, it's mandatory for the amendment of for the workplace
against harassment. Let's talk about the Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiatives also, that on the International Women's Day has launched a national gender policy framework. How important are frameworks such as these?
So yes, these frameworks like these are very important. For example, like my organization, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, when we're trying to work on our programs, when we're trying to build programs. So as an organization, we work in the communities and we try to talk to these women in communities and design programs working with them, so that they have their voice and their choice and their decision in this programming as well.
All right, poverty is one of the aspects, Sidra. Now, there are different aspects as far as women or girls are concerned that need to be adhered to. I would like to refer to what Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, said on the occasion. And he talked about remedying the issue that concerns women by 5 different steps. He talked about guaranteeing quality education for every girl, massive investment in women's training and decent work, effective action to end gender-based violence, universal health care, and gender quotas that could result in the world benefiting from more women leaders. When you look at these 5 points, one of the points, of course, is very relative or related to organizations such as yours, and that is massive investments in women's training and decent work. How important is that? How much has changed as far as Pakistan's scenario is concerned when giving women due trainings, right jobs, and the incentives to work under the right environment?
Yes. So the points that you just talked about. So for poverty, poverty and gender equality, they go hand in hand. If you talk about Pakistan, you cannot address the issue of poverty without addressing the needs of women first. True. So, in context of the rural areas, Pakistan generally, if you talk about women in Pakistan, it's not a homogeneous population, right? If you see about the rural-urban divide in context to access to facilities, access to education, access to livelihood opportunities, those women face quite different issues. So that's why when I was saying about community involvement and going to communities to working with them, then that's very important. If you talk about, if I talk about financial inclusion, because Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, so we as an organization, we are working in 147 districts out of total 160 districts in Pakistan. This means that we have reached towards, a lot of these rural women, a lot of these rural areas in Pakistan. We've quite this reach, and we're working with 130 partner organizations and trying to build these communities. So if I talk about the community institutions that are led by these communities, 63% of these include women, so that their voices are heard.
And of course, I think organizations such as yours are really working for the benefit of the female community and without any gender bias, and that is, I think, very important, Sidra. We've been joined online by Barrister Safi Ullah Khan Ghauri, Barrister Safi, who's not only a rights advocate but also advocates women's rights quite diligently, and we've discussed that on more than one occasion. Safi, thank you very much to have joined us. Safi, when you look at today, when we look at women's rights, when we look at what the Secretary General of the United Nations talks about, quality education, massive investment in women training, action to end gender-based violence, universal health care, and gender quotas, how much of that has been adhered to in the laws that Pakistan has passed to date?
Thank you, Omar. So, Omar, as far as the laws of Pakistan are concerned, I believe that the laws are sufficient. The Constitution of Pakistan, in its chapter on fundamental rights, specifically states that women are to be prioritized when being given fundamental rights. That includes access to health, access to education, access to equal opportunities in work. So, as far as the Constitution of Pakistan and subsequent laws are concerned, I believe that there has been sufficient legislation. In fact, if you were to compare the laws that we have in Pakistan versus laws that we have in the United Kingdom, such as the Human Rights Act of 1996, you would find that Pakistani laws are considerably more advanced. However, as I've stated time and again, the problem in Pakistan is not the presence of laws; it is
the implementation of the laws,
and that is where we continue to suffer. Now, I'll just take this opportunity to say something. This year, we were one of the law firms selected by the Aurat March for their protection. And I just want to bring to the public attention why the Aurat March had to engage a law firm this year, or not just one law firm. In fact, there were several law firms working this year. And the reason why we had this problem is simply because every single year they face threats, they face stonings. Last year there was violence and pandemonium in Islamabad when they were suddenly attacked by bait-and charge people, and so they are being consistently deprived of some fundamental rights such as the freedom of expression and the freedom of assembly. And so the deprivation of these rights is not just that of the general public; it is something that extends to the authorities. So if I were to sort of just bring you back to yesterday's events, the day before yesterday, the district administration of Islamabad refused to issue these women an NOC to gather. Subsequently, they had to take to the High Court and get an order from the High Court in order to just assemble. And the High Court asked them a simple question. The High Court called the district administration, called the government and said, you have given an NOC to an opposition party which is coming to the capital to dismantle you, clearly saying that they will dismantle you, that they will break up this government. You have given them an NOC, but you're not willing to give an NOC to some girls. What are you afraid of? So this is
all right. Now let's talk about women's rights. Now let's kind of deviate a little bit from what you've just said, and let's talk about the right of the women. When you talk of implementation of the laws, how much is the role of the civil society important in this day and age to pressurize for the civil rights of the women, as have been enunciated in these very laws that the government has passed? Our Prime Minister also today, he addressed a ceremony at a women's college, and he talked of the same thing. Our Minister Asad Umar Saab has also talked about women's rights. Shiri Mazari Saba's role has been quite prominent as far as the passing of such laws is concerned. Whether on one hand it is very important that the government implement these laws in letter and spirit and push for the implementation, how important is the role of the civil society as well?
So once again, Omar, it seems to be all important. Clearly, if the civil society was not involved, the government would not be bothered. It appears that it is a civil society that is consistently arm twisting the government into making new laws. We have that as a clear indication by the fact that the civil society actors were stakeholders in some of the more recent legislations. And even if we were to remove the example of the legislations themselves, the implementation of those laws seem to be taking place whenever the civil society takes to the court and forces the courts, forces the media to report on an issue by creating a nuisance enough for people to gather upon, to debate on, and for those rights then to be granted. This is an all-important role, and frankly, I feel like we are indebted to the civil society for doing something that is not their job. It is the job of the government.
All right.
This is not.
Well,
not
the government has launched the National Gender Policy Framework today as well as we speak. So let's see, and let's see how all of this goes and which direction all of this takes. I'll keep you online. Safi, kindly stay, because I'd like to ask one question to the both of you, starting with Sidra. Sidra, the right of the women, whether it be in the rural areas or the urban areas. Now, one of the reasons that has been pointed out very recently by our premier is that we have inherited certain social preconditioning or social laws. I mean, I wouldn't say laws, but social preconditioning, let's put it that way, that has made our society push women to a certain side, whereas our religion has never, has always put women on a pedestal. What do you feel we need to do in order to move forward? Well, I'm not talking about just urban women in particular or rural. I'm generalizing the whole context.
So if you talk about women, like you said, you just mentioned the social norms. So because we work a lot in rural areas, and over there, there are lots of issues. So I'll just give you one example. The theme for the UN theme this year is climate adaptation and involving women leaders in there. We are actually doing that through our programs, through our disaster resilience, one of our disaster resilience program. What we're doing is we're trying to engage the communities on how to better, sensitizing them and trying to engage them and consult them that how can we make them better prepared for disasters. So because of social norms, we want to engage the women. We have separate sessions just for women as well. So, when you're working in these communities, you need to understand that you have to work with these norms and you have to make the best out of it.
True.
So, yeah.
Safi, have we inherited a social structure that is detrimental for the female gender of our subcontinent in our country?
I think, Omar, this is a no-brainer. Yes, absolutely. We have a social structure that's deeply entrenched in patriarchy. The language of our, they say that there's this hypothesis called I can't recollect, but it's called something called the Waffer-Sorf hypothesis, and they talk about how language has an impact on the way you look at the world, and even our language views men as strong and women as weak. And of course, this has been an ongoing issue. I mean, if we were to look at pre-Islamic subcontinent, we had the practice of sati going on until very recently. We have, to date, just a little while ago, a stat came out that in the year 2021, 97% of women litigants were deprived of property that they had to rightfully inherit. So this is unfortunately commonplace. This is something that we see every day. There are many facets of how women are deprived of their rights, how they are treated as subhumans. But I do strongly believe that our culture has a lot to do with the way we do this. And unfortunately, I do not buy the idea of our culture being empowering to women. Although I would also like to add here that no culture has been empowering to women in history. And
because even in the West, to be very frank, Safi, how many prime ministers in the West have you seen who've been women? We have had Benazir Bhutto Sahiba, as Prime Minister, not once but twice. We've had the Speaker of the National Assembly who's been a woman. We've had ministers who are women. How much of that can the West boast of?
Absolutely, and women's suffrage in the West came at around the same time that it came in the East. So it's not like the condition of women in the West is any better. But we need to view women as we view men or as anyone else. This is what it is. They are equal human beings, and unfortunately I don't like the idea of there being a separate set of rules for men and a separate set of rules for women anywhere in the world, let alone my own country.
There should be a universal set of rules for all genders. This is what you're trying to say.
Absolutely.
All right, let's come to you, Sidra. Sidra, when you talk of universal set of rules, when you talk of parameters set for different genders and different societies, how much of that is applicable in a country like Pakistan, and how long is that struggle by different organizations in order to come to that point?
So I'm quite hopeful if you're talking about that. Yes, there are issues, and yes, there are barriers, there are cultural barriers, there are different barriers, but still, if you see, we've come a long way. And you were just talking about the West. If you compare the labor force participation of women, it was just about 10% in the 1990s, and now it is around 23%, about a quarter of women are working. I mean, yes, it's still low, but give it another decade, and just, development partners and government, all of us, we are working together. And I think one good thing is that the progressive voice voices in the government, in the development sector, they are really sensitized towards these issues. And one thing that we can all agree on is that, you know, this is something that's needed, and this is a lot of voices are advocating for. So yeah, I'm quite hopeful.
All right, and finally coming to back to the rural women, because that is one aspect of the society that you work on. That is something that I've seen firsthand in Sindh as well. You know, I've seen how women work from day to night in the desert, and how the men do almost nothing, and it's the women who are really rearing their children and working to bring money at the end of the month to the households. How important is it for the men to realize as well that they need to not only give women equal opportunity, but also respect women for what they are doing?
I think, of course, it's really important, and this awareness needs to be there, and this sensitization needs to be there. So, by example, I can tell you that when we are working with these communities, so I'll just give you an example of this really woman that I found really inspirational. I'd like to talk about her. So, in Karak area, there was this woman who's gotten our Amtul Rakib award as well. There was this climate change solar panels that were being installed over there, and this was a project that went long on. This woman, she housed people from the project. She really contributed to that, and now when we see that project up there, and we can see that she had her contribution behind that. So, you know, rather than saying that men, you know, should be doing more, I think having women seeing these women behind these causes, and seeing these women behind you know, these interventions, I think that's really important. And when we go in the communities and we talk to them, we see so many inspirational women. I mean, just give them assets. Just, you know,
there's so many success stories when you go even in the rural community of women who have gone beyond all odds to whatever they had to do and have come out leaders in their respective communities. Thank you very much, Sidra, Riaz, to have joined us. And finally, let's come to Safi. Safi, when you look at the role of women, and we've talked about the laws, we've talked about the role of the civil society, of the government, on what the impediments are, how important is the role of the men like yourself, like myself, but even those men who need to understand that they need to respect the womankind in their family and in their neighborhood, and also give them equal opportunities? What do we, like people like myself and yourself, need to do for them?
I think at the end of the day, Omar, it's a very important question, and I'll tell you. So this is me speaking to you, man to man, because we are talking about ourselves and our roles. I think historically, growing up, you must have noticed that there is a culture of toxic masculinity, and there is a particular role of domination that is also imposed upon all men, mostly by other men. This is peer pressure, either it's through families or it's through friends, and there is this whole concept of what a real man is. And I think as men, we are now faced with the situation and in a position where we now have to go and challenge that. We have to decide if a real man is somebody who goes and beats up his wife, if a real man is somebody who tries to dominate a woman, or if he sees her as an equal partner, if a real man is the breadwinner and the woman is the one who's the housewife, not being allowed to go out and work. So these norms that we have created because of what our impression of what manhood is what needs to be challenged. And I think if we were to address these issues of toxic masculinity, we would have a complete redressal of the kind of problems that we have in these sexual and gender divides as it is.
Let's hope for a better future. Let's hope for a better society and a better world where women are given equal rights. And I'm not just talking of our country, I'm talking of the West as well, where a lot of times the women are not given their due rights. A lot of times there is a gender disparity, and there's also, as far as the pay scales are concerned, women in the biggest of organizations across the world are not paid equally as men. So we need to, myself, yourself, and other men who believe equally, need to work collectively for that, whether we raise our voices here on this forum or on other fora. It's very important to have this public-private partnership for having a peaceful and equitable distribution of rights to women and men. Thank you very much, Barrister Safiullah Khan Ghauri, to have joined us and to have talked to us about women and their rights on this very important day from a man's perspective. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end, of course, this with the theme for this year's observance, that is gender equality for a sustainable tomorrow. Now, the year 2022, as we know, for achieving gender equality is important, but also in the context of COVID-19 that has impacted the world, including Pakistan. Now, COVID-19, as you know, has impacted businesses, has also impacted social relationships between the different genders, and in that we've heard a lot of cases of women not being respected properly, whether it be at the home or at the workplace. And that is why we need to recognize and celebrate the women and girls who are bringing that change in whether it be in the society, whether it be in the work environment, whether it be also leading the charge on climate change adaptation and response. We also need to honor their leadership and contribution towards a sustainable future. And we need to not only do that, but we also need to respect all the different women that have worked in our society, in our country, starting from Muhtarma Fatma Ali Jinnah Saiba, all the way now to Shireen Mazari Saiba, who's our Minister for Human Rights, who have worked so diligently and so effectively for raising the voice for the womankind, whether it be for Pakistan or for their communities or for the world in general. We need to honor these women. We need to give them more opportunities so that they can work in that respect. We need to also respect the women who are around us, across us. It is by respecting people that people will respect you back. It is a to and fro connection that is important to understand and to recognize in societies such as ours, but also in the West. I'd leave it at that. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns, of course, the need to de-escalate the current situation that is engulfing Ukraine, and of course the spate or the spike that we are also seeing coming from the West and from Russia as well. Our Prime Minister has always talked about peace, whether it be with Vladimir Putin, whether it be with the other leaders or the European Union chief very recently in a telephonic conversation, or our Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab, who has talked to his counterparts in different important countries, including Russia, including Ukraine, Romania, Hungary and Poland. They have emphasized the need to de-escalate the tensions and to talk, because at the end of the day, it's talks, it's discussions that will bring some kind of a negotiation process forward and some kind of middle ground where all the warring parties can sit down and work out a solution. Salman, Bhittani, Foreign Affairs expert, joins us in the studios to talk more about this. Salman, thank you very much to have joined us.
Thank you, sir.
Salman, when you look at the latest situation when it comes to Ukraine, it doesn't look very optimistic. But in this whole scenario, we see our Prime Minister talking about not taking sides, about trying to work towards a peaceful negotiation of the issue. We also see Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab talking to at different fora, whether it be with the former diplomats who've served or whether it be with his counterparts. How important is it for negotiation or a process that would concentrate on talks rather than such warring action to move forward in order to bring peace in the region?
Well, I think it's a commendable effort by Pakistan's Foreign Office and specifically the stance of Prime Minister Imran Khan when he says that we cannot be part of any war, but we can part of any peace process, may it be any side, because we have seen historically Pakistan has faced the brunt of wars unwarrantedly, and it has never been part of any significant war, but we have taken a lot of losses on our chests. So I think this foreign policy initiative, this foreign policy perspective is pointing towards the fact that Pakistan has grown, it has matured as a state, and now it is eyeing a peaceful settlement, a dialogue process, and it is also offering its good offices as a state which has a very important geopolitical and geostrategic location in the region for a peaceful settlement and for negotiations. I think in any war we have seen during the course of history that at the end of the day it is the table that decides the outcomes, it is not the battleground. Both the parties of war in this war as well would somehow fight, they would inflict numerous damages towards each other, and at the end of the day, they will exhaust themselves. One of the party will exhaust, and it will come to
at the
table.
end of the day, Salman, to be very blunt, it's the people
Yeah.
that are at a loss, because it's families that are ruined. And it is very pertinent to for all parties to realize that the only way forward is that. We've seen that in Afghanistan after 20 years. What has happened? There has been negotiation between the parties, and that has led to a government being formed. Why can't this happen in Ukraine? Why can't the parties sit down and talk? We know that there have been talks between Russia and Ukraine, but that haven't been very constructive. There is going to be another round of talks between the two sides. In all of this situation, our Prime Minister talks to the European Council President Charles Michel, and he also says that Pakistan was ready to play a facilitating role for the de-escalation of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Can Pakistan play such a role, and if so, how important is Pakistan's position in the region to move forward in that direction?
I think as far as the region is concerned, Pakistan cannot play a significant role, as in Pakistan is a South Asian country. But as far as Pakistani leadership is concerned, as far as Pakistan's role in the Afghan peace process is concerned, I think it has got good credentials. It has taken forward a very complicated, complex Afghan peace process to a very mature end, where it was least likely that the Taliban and the Americans would come to the table and they would talk. There used to be years when they would wait for spring offensives and summer offensives, and there would be suicide bombings across Afghanistan, and we used to do programs and we used to talk about, we analyze that. It was not in the offing, but this government, this present government particularly, and Pakistan as a state, played a pivotal role in the negotiations that the Doha talks that was witnessed by the whole world. So on that front, yes, Pakistan has a potential. It has been part of international diplomacy in the past as well. And then our Prime Minister was there, he met President Putin. So he has also developed good offices in Russia as well, which was another breakthrough foreign policy initiative from Pakistan as well. So in this fresh relationship patterns, yes, Pakistan would have some sort of say in that realm. But I think, and this call was also very important that you mentioned between the EU and the Pakistani counterparts. But here the problem, EU, yes. But the problem here is that global politics has not changed much, because you see there has always been this game of containment of each other, countering each other's strategy, each other's political significance. So we have been witnessing that the Eastern European side and the Caucasus and Baltic side has been a hotbed of politics for the last decade or so. So I think Russia had enough of patience, and now they have resorted to war. War is not a good option. It is failure of diplomacy, as we say. But at the end of the day, I think meddling around in regions, meddling around in security complexes in other regions, that would create such disastrous outcomes, where, as you said, that the real victims are the people, the normal people. So definitely Pakistan can play a role. Pakistan has stated very clearly that it cannot be part of any war, but it can only be part of any peaceful settlement, any settlement that is that brings two parties to the negotiating table.
All right, Salman, let's talk also about Pakistan's neutrality in all of this. In the past, Pakistan has borne the brunt of taking sides as far as the Afghan conflict is concerned, and we have all seen the repercussions that emanated out of this. The tens of thousands of people, civilians who were killed, our armed forces, Jawans who were martyred in the tens of thousands as well. But of course, at the end of the day, we conquered this nefarious element that was trying to sabotage Pakistan. But that came as a result of us siding on one side as far as the Afghan conflict is concerned. Now that the current government is trying to maintain a neutrality as far as that is concerned, and it is again being pushed to take take sides. How important is this current decision of Pakistan, despite the pressure, not to take any side?
I think it is very important. These are testing times, because Pakistan had been struggling with its economy. It has been facing the brunt of terrorism, and we had to deal with a lot of problems at hand in here. Like there was earthquake in 2005, then there were 2010 floods, then the streak of terrorism. So we have been struggling, and we have been in cooperation with these international institutions. We were in cooperation with the US and other European countries. But at this juncture of history, I think it is very important to state very clearly, as we have, that we cannot take sides. Neutrality is very important. Because global politics is transforming into a multi-polarity power struggle.
And bloc politics as well.
In bloc politics, we have an old fair weather friend, China, at our doorstep. We are dealing with an enemy in South Asia. We have been dealing with terrorism, with the menace of terrorism, and there are still some skirmishes, and some splinter groups are still at work, and we have to deal with them. So at this juncture of history, Pakistan cannot afford to take side of either one bloc or the other. Pakistan can only be a partner in economic progress, economic development. It can facilitate the peace process, as it has recently done, I was mentioning, and it can only be part of some progressive agenda in global politics. It cannot be part of a regressive agenda. So this neutrality is very important at this juncture of time. Yes, it would be difficult. There would be a lot of diplomatic pressure as we are witnessing. There would be calls, and there would be envoys, and they would be somehow creating, like we have seen that there was pressure in the UN session as well. But our ambassador to UN has given a very clear speech there, where we said that we can only be part of a 3 points peace settlement process, where there is ceasefire and negotiation and settlement. So I think it's very important. It is setting the course of history for Pakistan's foreign policy, and I hope we stand by this culture, and we are introduced in the world as someone who has got an independent foreign policy, and as a non-aligned state, kind of a progressive state in South Asia.
All right, Salman, you were talking of China. Let's talk a little bit about the Chinese role as well. Whereas China has also tried to maintain a kind of a neutral balance between the two sides. It has said that it's going to send humanitarian aid to Ukraine. On the other hand, it respects Russia's decisions, and of course says that it is not going to meddle into the current crisis. But of course, China is also being labeled as a sympathizer for one side and not for the other. Is this also a continuation of this long spate between the West and China? And do you feel this is an excuse, in your point of view? I'm just trying to ascertain that or understand that, for the West to continuously put China on one side of the spectrum.
I think if you see the development that has been going on after this Ukrainian episode, there is this clear division and bifurcation of West against the rest, like the rest against the West. Like West is projecting Russia, pro-Russia or closer to Russia states, or even the states, those who are in the region, as a bloc, as an anti-bloc. And the whole media industry is fueling on the propaganda which is against Russia, and definitely they are taking this opportunity.
Because even the Chinese spokesperson has said that all the reports that are emanating that there is a Chinese-Russian collaboration on Ukraine is fake news. They have also said, so a lot of news is emanating that is trying to put China on the wrong side of history as far as this current crisis.
I think they are taking this opportunity because it is a great opportunity for the propaganda machines, and definitely China was their target. It has been their target for a long time. So they will bracket China with Russia. Otherwise, I think it's really absurd to think about China in that way, because had it been part of this this process, or had it been ally of Russia in this very war, it would have been clearly saying that. because that would have given them credibility and confidence, because now we see, as far as the ground is concerned, Russia is very dominant. Militarily, Russia is very dominant. The Ukrainian forces, they cannot resist Russian military might, and we have also seen that none of the European powers, nor NATO as a whole and US, they came to the rescue of Ukraine. So why would somebody not be on the side of winners? Because it is eminent, we can see that on ground Russia will win, Russia is winning.
All right.
Why would China not want to be on the side of the victorious state?
Finally, Salman, with all the developments that are taking place, whether it be the embargoes on Russia, whether it be Russia changing the system of its virtual currency, and so on and so forth, are we seeing a new economic system being put to the world, or being displayed towards the world, one that will also show a certain multipolarity? And if that is the case, is this going to affect the global economy in the months to come?
Definitely, I think this policy of this strategy of sanctions and blocking each other's markets, and then putting embargoes, and then creating a problematic demand and supply chain for oil supplies and gas supplies, using economy as a tool of strangling, that will affect the global economy. Global economy was already suffering from the perils of COVID. Now this war and these strategies, as you mentioned, they will definitely affect the global economy. And to add to your question, it will greatly affect the third world countries and the developing world as well, because which has always been struggling. But yes, there would be a new aspect in this politico-economic order as well. There would be new means of communication as far as financial channels are concerned. The currency that is on World Wide Web, that is the new thing on the block. So these innovations will also come into play, and we have seen there are a lot of sanctions on Iran.
Will that lead to a bifurcation? And this is what I'm trying to understand as far as the global economy is concerned.
Definitely, there would be a bifurcation, and there would be more means of exploitation of not only the masses, but the third world South countries.
Hence, Salman, the need to go for a peaceful negotiation and a peaceful process that leads to an end to such hostilities and an end to such tensions that are engulfing millions and millions of people in this region. Thank you very much, Salman Bhittani, foreign affairs expert, to have joined us and to have talked to us about Pakistan's moves in order to de-escalate the tension. Thank you very much. Let's come to our last two stories, ladies and gentlemen, very quickly. First comes from France, a report that is published by CAGE, an independent advocacy organization, highlights the crackdown on Muslims in France under the sweeping systematic obstruction powers exactly 4 years since the law was applied. Now, authored by French legal jurist and CAGE researcher Ryan Freshy, this report that is entitled "We Are Beginning to Spread Terror, the State-Sponsored Persecution of Muslims in France," outlines the methods of persecution of French Muslims by Emmanuel Macron's government. Now, this is of course a report that is scathing in its detail, and I hope that if the points that are written in this are true and are being applied to the Muslim community, that the French government will take the necessary measures to revert its decisions. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll end on a kind of a happy note for the masses of Pakistan. The Economic Coordination Committee of the Cabinet has approved the Ramzan relief package worth 8,280 million rupees to facilitate the masses during the holy month of Ramzan. It's upon us a couple of weeks. In fact, next month is going to be this holy month, and of course the approval for this subsidy was given at the meeting of the committee in Islamabad. Shaukat Aleen Saab, who's the finance minister, was in the chair, and also the cabinet has approved the Prime Minister's relief package of 5 rupees per unit reduction in the electricity charges base rate, and also approved the Kamyab Overseas Program as a new component of the Kamyab Pakistan program. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we end today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. All I have to say at the end is respect everybody, whether it be your elders, whether it be the young ones, whether it be the women around you. Give them respect, give them the opportunities to do whatever they want to do with their lives, and that is how a society will become strong. Allah Hafiz.